She has co-authored Chicken Soup for the Indian Soul for Westland. She has contributed features for Times of India, Femina, Girls, Life, Positive, Mary Claire, and Midday Mumbai. She is a columnist with Ahmedabad Mirror and Femina. May I request you, ma'am, to please take over?
All of you have heard of Mr. Doshi, the architect. So this is something to do with him that he passed on this message to me. This happened during the time I was writing, actually working on my second book, Roots and Wings, which is about dealing with children and, helping them find their potential. And being a helicopter mom who had read a lot of books, I wanted to just be there and help them and kind of just be there for them and everything. And no matter what I did, how much I read to them, the number of classes they went, or the kind of space I gave them, I was always, I was not happy with the way things were going. So this was the time when Mr. Doshi kind of saw this conflict in me, and he said, let's go for a walk. So I went for a walk with him, and he took me to the university area, and he takes me under a tree. This was the month of October, November, and he asks me to look up, and I look up, and he says, so what do you see? So there was that tree without any leaves, and it was really bare, and I thought like, okay, I get it, that some people are without much, but so what? So he says, is that how your life looks to you? Bare, finished, done? And I was like, yeah, actually his daughter and I, Radhika, we are very good friends. So I said, yeah. I said, no matter what I do, the amount of effort I put, it just comes to nothing. So he says, and you feel that you failed and, you can't really do much. I said, oh, yeah, I do feel, at least a part of me feels like that. And then he just spoke to me about here and there and returned. And I was like, great job. You're supposed to pep me up and you remind me of what I'm not. Anyways, couple of months pass, spring comes, and then I get a call from Radhika, hey, let's go for a walk again. And we go. And again, we are chatting about, he tells us about his architectural challenges and, things like that. And we walk and we go under the very same tree. And he tells me to look up. And I look up. And this time, the tree is full. It's full of leaves. I can see some buds and shoots. I can actually also see a nest. And I can hear some birds. And he says, so what do you see now? I said, wow, this is full. So he tells me, so what do you... He said, this is us. And that was also us. He said, these are all frames. And then he told me the most important thing that I'll always remember for the rest of my life. He said, like the tree, what we need to be our full selves, to reach our potential, we are born with it. We are born with the seeds or the potential to grow. Whenever the environment is right, when there is enough water, when there is sun, we will reach our potential. But the desire to grow, the need to grow, and the imperative to grow is within us. And he says, the problem with us is, when we see what you saw in November, we think this is it. We take the frame, that one frame of our life, to be the entire picture. He says it's never like that. A frame is always a frame, and a picture can only be seen on the bed, on the last bed. And that is also, he says, that is the way it is with children. He said, what you see today, what you think today is their potential, is just a frame that you are seeing in the limited context that they have, that you have given them, and also that their schools have given them. For a child, I think a school and home, and of course now friends, these are the three big worlds that a child inhabits and interacts with and decides what he wants to be, he or she, and how much he can grow. So he says a frame is always about a context. But a whole picture is about different contexts that you meet and see as you grow in life. So whenever I see it another person, whether it's a student, I have two daughters, whether it's my own children, and most importantly, whether it is about myself, I always isolate my blocks, my challenges, my failures, and I see them as a frame and not as a picture. And this one thing itself has helped me deal with life in a much better way. Okay, so now I'll come to the whole thing of book and reading. I went to a talk at the Jaipur Literature Fest, and Mr. Amartya Sen was giving a talk. And he said that, think of Mahabharat. He said, think of the youth. Arjun ne kaha कि how do I lift the weapons against my Priyajan? I have grown up with them. They have taught me. Bhishma is my Pitama. Dronacharya has taught me how to, aim this bow and arrow. How do I lift my weapons against these very people? And Krishna says, if there is a fight of dharam and adharam, तो धर्म को तो जीतना ही पड़ेगा. So more than what you feel is what your dharma is, and you have to do your dharma. And then Amartya Sen says that both of them are right, and both of them are speaking a truth. And that is what India and our culture is all about. We understand parallel truths. We understand two truths being together which can coexist, which can both be right. And he says, when we look at the West today, when we ape them, when we follow what they say, we are actually thinking of linear thing, black and white, okay, truth or untruth. But our heritage, our culture has always told us about all these parallel truths which are correct at the same time. And that is why it gets me to the point of books and reading. So the way you see life is your perspective. And what is your perspective? Your perspective is the education you got. Your perspective is the environment you had, what your parents taught you. Maybe the stories your grandparents told you, the school you went to, or the friends you played with. That's your perspective. When you pick up a book, what do you see? You see maybe a telling of a story from somebody across the city, maybe somebody across the country, maybe somebody across the continent. As a teenager, I remember those books which all teenagers read. I remember this one book which really, really got me thinking. That was Gone with the Wind. I'm sure, I don't know how many of you have read Gone with the Wind. And that book, and that is what I think books do to you. So what happened with Gone with the Wind? Gone with the Wind is a love story, as we all know, but more importantly, what is the backdrop of the book? It is based at the time of abolition of slavery. When you see a story, but what you are actually reading, you're not reading about Scarlett O'Hara and Red Butler. You're reading about America at the time when Abraham Lincoln was freeing the people and telling them that this is not what is okay. And of course, we know those huge estates and how the slaves revolted and whatever. And then that got me into reading about everything about Abraham Lincoln. So when we read a book, we actually don't read just a story of a person. We read an entire set of events, an entire context. And when I read that, I get a sense of perspective of a person, of two people, of a race, of a state, and of a historical part in time. And what I have understood, my elder one is right now she's 19, she's studying psychology at USC. And what I understand, that what education is all about today is about application of our perspective. And I don't understand how can we not extend our perspective when there are so many means we can? And one of the biggest ways, I think, for us to see one situation from 180 degree is through books. So now let me ask you something. So I'm going to put a very funny question to you. And believe me, there is no right or wrong answer, but I would still like answers from the audience, okay? So imagine a scenario. Imagine a scenario where somebody whom you really love, could be your husband or wife, could be your child, could be your parent, could be a friend you dearly love, could be a colleague. That person whom you really, really love and care for has lost that project or that tender or something that the person was working on, maybe a chess competition, okay? So something that your loved one is very passionate about and perhaps has been working on it for months or maybe a year, maybe a child in some competition. He loses it. He or she loses that particular thing. And that person comes back very, very sad and dejected to you at home, okay? So what are the things? What do you want to do? Can I have some answers? How do you reach out to that person? Obviously, you want to help, right? You love the person. So what are you going to say? Can I have some answers? Very nice. Yeah, it's okay. We'll try. There's always a next time. Any answer which is different than this? Come on. There's so many things we tell to a person who's very sad and who's lost something. Yeah? Okay, fantastic. Just hug him. Okay, I'm there. What else? Yeah. So, you lost it, but the world is not over. I love you. Okay? So I'm there. What else? Yeah. There is, again, the sun is going to rise tomorrow. What else? Yeah, so distraction. Okay, you lost that? No, never mind, we'll do this and we'll do that. Anything else? Sorry? Yeah, so see, there's a next time and we will all prepare, We will plug the loops and we'll do what needs to be done and we'll be good. Anything else? Yeah, so, if this has happened, it has happened for a reason. So God has it all planned and maybe, you needed to learn some lessons and maybe it'll be there.
At times we can also tell them that there are failures. Life is not always...
Very nice, yeah. So,
success is not there.
Yeah, exactly. So you agree to need to fail too, right? Yeah, sure.
I'm going to repeat what my father used to tell me when
Okay.
I was young. He would say, and I think this is quite opposite here when we are talking to the teachers. He used to say, and very emphatically, that the goal of life is not to go ahead of others. Do good by yourself. Set your own standards and try to achieve those standards. But the goal is not to go ahead of others.
Okay.
See, don't engage yourself in a rat race.
Okay, that's very, very interesting. So in the end, it's a race and you know what your value is. Okay, now I'm asking you to turn the situation 180 degree. You are the one who has lost it and you come home and your loved one tells you, there is tomorrow, and you want to give him one whack. Even I know there is tomorrow. Okay? I mean, these are all right answers. I'm going to come to it. And the person says, it's a rat race. I know, but I ran in that rat race. So if I ran for a reason. The person says, life is made of failures. Even I know you also failed so many times, but right now I'm feeling bad about it, okay? Now, all these are actually perfect answers. I mean, absolutely, we need to hear that. And you can do it. And if you failed, there must be something you need to plug it. All these are perfect answers. But I want to ask you something about perspective. When you fail in something, when you don't do something right, what is that one thing you want to hear? Okay, I have gone with this question to hundreds and hundreds of talks. And interestingly, only in one session, one 16-year-old girl told me, actually something very, very close to what you said. She said, so she had a very dear friend. So she said, when my friend lost the race to the head girl, I told her, oh my God, that must be hurting like hell. And the friend hugged me and burst into crying. So what is our first need as humans? Our first need is to feel that you understand what I am. You know. And so what is the first need for us? It is to know that you know what is going inside me. Okay? And that is enough. If we know that one other person on this earth knows that this is what I'm feeling right now, and he's there, or he or she is there with me, not because you are there because you love me. It is you're there because you understand it's hurting me right now. That's enough. And then, of course, when we fail something, we need to feel empowered. Okay, there is a tomorrow. We all know. But when we are down and dejected, we all want to know about what is there when the morning sun rises. So, yeah, you need to plug the holes. Yeah, you have to set your own standards. Everything is right. But what is this? To be able to hug and say that, oh my God, that must be hurting so much. It's a perspective. And this perspective comes, actually a lot of it comes from reading, because when you read, in the end, what are we? We are a bundle of thoughts, we are a bundle of feelings, and we can only know what we think, okay? Or we can only know these 5 people we interact with. We all have such busy lives. When we read, we read perspectives. And whenever we read a perspective, we'll always be able to relate. So only today I was reading in Time magazine, there is this very, very famous book called Capital, which has become the bestseller. This person studied the world economy for 30 years and wrote this book. I'm going to order my copy, but he says that the only way we can bring change in ourselves or the people, or we can change ourselves, and we can maybe make another person think that he or she could change. That's the maximum, that's the sphere of our influence over another. We can only do that when it makes sense here. A lot of things make sense here, right? And this can only happen when we can identify with it. So now let me tell you one very, very interesting story that happened that changed the way I understood about my child, and my child unwittingly revealed her own issue. This is when she was, I think, 14 years old. And we were reading this book, Chronicles of Narnia, together. And there is this little para in it, which I want to read to you. This is from the book, I quote, "For the next few days, she was miserable. She could have made it up with the others quite easily. At any moment, if she could have brought herself to say that the whole thing was only a story made up for fun. But Lucy was a very truthful girl, and she knew that she was right, and she could not bring herself to lie. The others who thought she was telling a lie, and a very silly little lie too, made her very unhappy." Now, I don't know how many of you've read Chronicles of Narnia, but this is the point where Lucy, the little heroine, she sees the whole world of Narnia behind her closet. Now, when she goes and tells her friends, everybody laughs at her and sneers at her, okay? So then me and my daughter, after having read that passage, we got into a discussion. So she asked me that, "Mom, what would you do? Suppose you knew you were right, and suppose nobody was there to believe you. Would you give in to the peer pressure? Would you lie to fit in? Or would you stick to your grounds even though people laughed at you and you knew you were singled out?" So I thought about it very seriously, and I said, no, I think if I would lie. The need to fit in is very strong. Maybe it is not right, but it is there. And then I asked her, I said, "What about you?" So she tells me, I'm never the Lucy mom. I want to be Lucy. So in that little one story and one incident, she revealed me so much about herself. And also she made me think about the way I would react. And I think this is what books and stories do. I think they touch us. I think when we find ourselves in those situations, we can relate, and at the very least, not at the most, at the very least, books make us think, oh my God, do I need to change? Am I okay? And maybe in that bid, the process of change will start. And I think that is what it is, right? To be able to see that maybe this is not right. So I think this is what the books bring to us. So that's one part of the book. Now, the second part is about writing. I think that is what Mr. Choksi, you wanted me to address, right? About writing. Now, I have done, and before I finish on the session of books, there are fantastic authors for children aged between 5 and 18, okay? If you want, Mr. Choksi can email me. I can send you books of, especially there's one author which comes to my mind called Jerry Springley. He's an American guy. He's written from the perspective of a 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old. He's spoken about peer pressure, about the pressure of appearance, about social media, in a very story context, which is very easy for children to relate. And I strongly recommend that author. So you all could go and there are many, many other authors that I've read to my, books that I've read to my children. Anyways, now coming back to the writing bit. While doing the titles of Chicken Soup for the Indian Soul, I have till now, I have edited about 13 titles, which is 1,300 stories. And out of those 1,300 stories that I have selected, I think at least 1,000 stories come from non-writers. So what is writing all about? Writing is not about writing the perfect English or flowery English or wanting to impress others. No. For me, writing is about communication. There is something in me, so writing is about your perspective. Like Amriti Sen shared his perspective and it found resonance. So writing is about, oh my God, this is what I think about this, and this is what I tried, and maybe it makes sense. And I think as Indians, why our problem with actual writing is because we are an oral tradition. We've had stories handed down to us through grandparents, through chachas, through in the Gurukul system. We've always heard and we've always spoken. But we don't write, and especially now that because of the English language, which is not our first language, it is not that easy as well. But, but if we could, for once, in the act of writing, if we could block all our fears of being maybe grammatically right, maybe not using proper words, maybe if we just think about writing what we want to communicate. If I just focus that I want to say this, and I want to say this because I feel it should be told, and focus on that. So while I was doing the Chicken Soup for the Soul series, I persuaded at least 500 to 600 non-writers to just give me in one para what they think they have learned. Chicken Soup for the Soul, I don't know how many of you have read it. We have actually one for Teacher's Soul too. Okay. So, I put that title together. So I actually persuaded a lot of teachers to write. And I think teachers are a storehouse of stories because every day they are meeting 40, 50 students. Now imagine the power and the influence you people have, okay? These are the young minds. Oh, I must tell you one thing. I must share this. When I was actually I was a very bad student till the 7th grade. Terrible student. Always I used to come 40, 41st.